and welcome to part 5 of my new player series for the engineer profession. This guide is for new and returning players with little or no experience of engineering in the hope of saving them hours of reading on the wiki. In part 1 of this guide, we looked at the engineer's history, archetype and game style to give you an overview of the profession. In part 2, we covered engineering kits. In part 3, gadgets. And in part 4, we looked at turrets. Now, here in part 5, we dive into the insanity of elixirs. Because what could go wrong when downing dubious home-brewed concoctions? To any and all risk-takers out there, no matter how much something looks like confectionery, please do not nominate yourself for a Darwin Award by ingesting toxic chemicals. Marvel Universe alchemy does not apply on terra firma, and I would dearly miss you in the comments section below. Now, before we jump in, new players, please take note of the links to the wiki in the description relating to Guild Wars 2 combat terms, as you will be encountering some unfamiliar language here. There are also timestamps in the pinned comment below, so you can select the part of the guide that you are interested in. So, what are elixirs? Well, elixirs are unique to the engineer and are a consumable chemical cocktail with often unpredictable results. There are currently elixirs: the healing Elixir H, the utility elixirs B, C, R, and U, and the elite Elixir X. So let's dive into the individual elixirs, starting with the healing Elixir H. Drinking this cocktail grants one of 3 boons. You can gain either 5 seconds of protection, or 10 seconds of regeneration, or 10 seconds of swiftness. Its tool belt skill, Toss Elixir H, is a ground-targeted skill with a range of 900. Like its primary mechanic, this skill gives one of those 3 random boons to up to 5 allies in its 240 radius. Its area of effect is easy to see thanks to the targeting graphics. There are 3 traits found in the invention specialization line that work well with all engineering healing skills. The cleansing synergy trait removes 1 condition on up to 5 allies in a range of 300 around the engineer when using a healing skill. The automated medical response trait resets the global cooldown on your healing skills when your health falls below 25% of its maximum. The healing resonator trait triggers 6 seconds of regeneration on up to 5 allies in a 240 radius around the engineer when using a healing skill. Onto the Elixir U skill, which when consumed grants 6 seconds of swiftness, increasing your attack and action speed by 50%. It also gives you 6 seconds of either fury or 5 stacks of might, as well as acting as a stun breaker. Its tool belt skill, Toss Elixir U, is a ground-targeted 900 range skill that randomly either creates a wall of reflection, summoning a barrier which reflects projectiles back to their source for 10 seconds, or creates a smoke screen which blocks incoming projectiles and inflicts 1 second of blindness on foes and endures for 7 seconds. These skills have been pinched from the Guardian and the Thief skill trees, and are not the only abilities shamelessly usurped from other professions by our unscrupulous tinkers. The elite Elixir X is another prime example of the engineer's tea-leafery, as when consumed, the engineer will either enter the warrior form Rampage for 15 seconds, assuming the form of a massive juggernaut, or they will take on the elementalist tornado state, transforming into a raging, tornado. In each instance, the engineer's action bar is replaced with a unique set of skills for each of the stolen abilities. In Aquatic Combat, these skill options change to the Necromancer's Plague state, and again the unfortunate Elementalist's Whirlpool state too. Even its tool belt skill, Toss Elixir X, has been pilfered from the traumatized Mesmer. This ground-targeted 900 range hard crowd control can transform up to 3 targets into mowers for 3 seconds. To add insult to significant injury, this skill is arguably better than the Mesmer's own polymorph skill. Oh dear. Next up is Elixir B, which grants 10 seconds of Fury, 5 stacks of Might for 10 seconds, 10 seconds of Retaliation, and 10 seconds of Swiftness when consumed. Its tool belt skill, Toss Elixir B, is a ground-targeted skill with a 900 range. At the targeted location, up to 5 allies are granted 3 stacks of stability for 4 seconds, as well as 1 other boon. The possible boons are 10 seconds of Fury, 5 stacks of Might for 10 seconds, 10 seconds of Retaliation, or 10 seconds of Swiftness. On your screen now is a list of boons and their effects for your reference, so you can pause the video to refresh your memory if needed. If you are a fan of Elixir B, take note of the Alchemy Specialization trait Hidden Flask. This trait automatically triggers Drink Elixir B when you are struck whilst below 75% of your maximum health. Please note, the effect of Elixir B is granted, but this trait does not trigger the drinking animation. Elixir C, when consumed, converts conditions you are enduring into boons. The maximum number of conditions you can convert is 13. On screen now is a conversion table, showing conditions to boons for your reference. The tool belt skill Toss Elixir C is a ground-targeted 900 range throw that converts up to 2 conditions into boons on up to 5 allies in its targeted radius of 240. Elixir R, when consumed, replenishes your endurance bar and removes immobilizing conditions. Endurance is the resource used to dodge, so this is a very handy skill for escaping pursuers. Its tool belt skill, Toss Elixir R, is a ground-targeted 900 range skill which cures 1 condition on up to 5 allies. It can also revive downed allies too. During its 10-second duration, it replenishes downed players' revival bar by 17% each second. The total number of pulses for this skill is 10. This is great for getting a teammate up during combat when you would likely be downed yourself if you had to do it manually. Finally, Elixir S, when consumed, shrinks the engineer. This action is categorized under the invulnerability skill family, making the engineer immune to conditions and damage for 3 seconds, but cutting off access to any other abilities for the said same 3 seconds. This Stonebreaker finds use in PvP combat as a stomp assist when finishing off downed enemies. Its tool belt skill, Toss Elixir S, is a 900 range ground targeted skill which grants 5 seconds of stealth to up to 5 allies in its targeted area of 180. The Alchemy Specialization trait, Self-Regulating Defense, triggers Drink Elixir S when you are struck when you have 25% or less health remaining. It's very handy for one of those oh sugar moments. Now I want to talk about Elixir mechanics in Aquatic Combat, because there are a few changes you need to be aware of, and I want to do it here in its own little section so I don't need to endlessly repeat myself and put you guys to sleep even more than usual. The consume mechanic remains unchanged from regular old land-based scrapping. Your tool belt skill, however, works differently under the Azure waves. As you would imagine, ground targeting does not make much sense in an environment where the ground is an optional thing. Instead, they have a 240 range detonation, so you can still hurl your elixir up to 900 units away. The elixir flies off in a straight line ahead of the engineer and then detonates. For Elixir H, B, U and C, this is the only change. For Elixir S, in Aquatic Combat, its tool belt skill grants 5 seconds of stability instead of stealth. For Elixir R, its revival mechanic is tweaked for underwater combat, but still revives down players. Now it's clear that ArenaNet has deprioritized Aquatic Combat, but Forewarned is forearmed. Now let's look at some useful traits to match with your favorite elixirs. From the Alchemy specialization line, alchemical tinctures and the H trait are recommended. The alchemical tincture trait triggers when an elixir is thrown or consumed. This trait adds condition removers to elixirs and can remove a condition on the engineer and their allies depending on the elixir used. This trait also grants a 240 increase to concentration, which increases the duration of boons. The HGH, or human growth hormone trait, that sounds really yummy, allows elixirs to grant 2 stacks of might for 15 seconds, as well as reducing all elixir cooldowns by 20% and increasing their duration by 20% too. To enhance and modify your tool belt skills, traits from the tool specialization line are recommended. The Optimize activation trait grants 2 seconds of Vigor when using a tool belt skill. Vigor increases your endurance regeneration by 50%. The Static Discharge trait adds a bouncing damage component to your attacks when using a tool belt skill and has a range of 1200. The Mechanized Deployment trait reduces the recharge rate of your tool belt skills by 15%. Finally, a quick word about the Elixir Gun and the Elixir Shell from the Elite Mortar Kit. One could argue that the Elixir Gun and the Elixir Shell could or even should be covered in the Elixir video, but I've already covered them in kits, links in the top right hand corner of the screen for that, so you'll have to forgive me and jump to that guide if you want to have a look at those. So that's all the elixirs for the engineer as it stands in February 2018. Please like this video if you found it informative and share it if you did, and please do let me know in the comments which elixirs you use the most and why. Many thanks to my patrons for their kindness. Their support allows me to devote more and more of my time to content creation. I can never thank them all enough for their dedication, friendship and enthusiasm. They keep this one-woman show up, running and more or less sane, so thank you all so very much. If you are thinking of joining the Guild Wars 2 community, there are referral links below to the free-to-play game, the Heart of Thorns expansion and the Path of Fire expansion too. Thanks to the generosity of ArenaNet and their partner program, using these referrals directly supports my channel. In part 7, we will be checking out the Hot to Trot Hollowsmith Elite specialization. I hope you join me again, but until then, as always, thanks for watching.